Hello there, good evening. You're welcome to Dmrtv Debate this weekend, live from Boya in Cameroon. On Dmrtv Debate, we talk on issues, we discuss and debate issues that cut across different aspects of life. And tonight, we are going to be touching on one aspect that deals with the fundamentals of human existence, governance. And in this edition, we are going to be looking at democracy. Democracy is the best form of governance. That is our debate topic tonight. Now, we live in a world where governance shape our daily realities. And of course, we all know that the discussion on democracy is ever relevant, given that many countries across the globe have developed principles of democracy that have kept them going for over the years. But those who are very much proponents to the ideas of democracy hold that the concept has given a community where people can live collectively, are heard and are well engaged in participation and representation in different aspects. While those who stand against this motion are very much of the view that democracy betrays itself sometimes. It has caused polarization in the governance issue, and most especially sometimes conflicts of interest and influence from those who propagate democracy. Other concepts of governance have existed over the years, but why is democracy so much talked about, and why is it most cherished by some people? The debates are really going to be heated. Merit and the drawbacks of democracy are what we are going to be looking at in this edition of Dmrtv Debate. So I want to welcome those of you who are joining us in this edition, and for those for the very first time, this is how we roll on the program every Saturday from Dmrtv. Now, I'm going to introduce to you the panel with which we are going to be looking at this program. With me, Jude Mbako Munyo here. But remember that those of you watching at home, you have the opportunity as well to join us on our social media platforms. We would like to hear from you. I guess, yes, there's a number on your screen as well. You will be able to send your views if you care, and tell us what you think about the topic for tonight, for or against the discussion, the topic we have. So this evening, without much ado, let me quickly welcome our panelists, our debaters. But may I also just inform you that my debaters this evening, they might not be expert in some kind of international governance issues, but they are well read on issues, these contemporary issues, and they have done some research to be able to educate you. That is their responsibility, to educate you on issues, on this issue of governance. So the opinions they give here will be for intellectual purposes, not necessarily their individual and personal stance. All right. So tonight, let me welcome those who are going to be standing for the motion that democracy is the best form of governance. I begin to my far left. We have a gentleman here, Yannick Fonki Ndele. He is a journalist and equally the program chief here at Dmrtv. He joins the debate tonight. Yannick, thank you for coming. Equally, we have next to him Jude Aka Zong, seminarian on pastoral here at Dmrtv. Jude, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
To my right are those who are against the notion that democracy is the best form of governance in today's contemporary society. First, Bernard Asongna. He is a seminarian as well in the Diocese of Boya. Bernard, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mr.
And with him, debating against this issue is Franklin Fomuko, a seminarian as well. Franklin, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
The principle for the debate are simple. The first 10 minutes will be given for the first speakers from each of the camps. They will be able to expand elaborately on the issue at stake. Then when we come back, the second speakers will be having 8 minutes. Okay, so 10 minutes for the first speakers. Second speakers will have 8 minutes. And to wrap up their ideas and conclusions in this dialogue engaging debate, we are going to have 4 minutes for last speakers to speak. So let us have a breather. When we come back, we get into real business. Now you're welcome back. Let us begin with Yannick Fonki Ndele, who has the floor for the first 10 minutes to expound on the motion that democracy is the best form of governance. Yannick, your time starts now. Have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Hello to you and to my fellow panel, fellow members of the other side. Hello to you. I am standing for the motion that democracy is the best form of governance. Democracy is the best form of governance, and I'm here to substantiate my point. Now, democracy is a word as old as earth itself. It is spanning itself from as far back as the 4th BC, before Christ, when it erupted and it formulated itself and has stood itself to be the test of time. It is derived from the Greek word demokratia, meaning a form of governance where everyone is in charge. It is a form where the power is vested on the people rather than those who are being elected. It gives the fundamental principles, which of course include accountability, the rule of law, transparency, protection of individual rights and freedom. The concept of democracy, like I told you, dates back as far back as in the ancient Greeks, particularly during the time of the Athens, around the 4th, 5th BCs. The Athenian democracy, I want to tell you, was a direct form of governance where citizens participated directly in issues and decision making. This early model of democracy shaped the way democracy has stood itself to be at this moment. In centuries passed by, democracy evolved and became even bigger and better and tastier even better. I tell you, in July, or say the time, Augusto 1215, that was a moment in history where Britain changed its fate. I want to tell you, before then, the monarchy in Britain decided everything in Britain. But on 1215, that is around Augusto, what we call July now or August, 1215, the British decided to shift the power from the monarch and give it the rule of law to be the form of governance. And they called that document Magna Carta. That document shaped British governance and shifted power from the monarch down to the people. And moving forward, the Americas and the French, through their different revolutions, shaped democracy in a very beautiful way. Now, the United States Constitution and the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Form of Citizen in France enhanced democracy. In the 20th century and the 21st century, we had waves of democratization that swept across the world. And you saw that when the people could decide the fate of governance in their country, you saw that those in power, those who wielded power, were more accountable, and the people could easily decide in another tenure who would be the person in charge or person to lead them. Now, this is against, or this waved against, the time of the emperors and the monarchs who wielded powers. You literally run across power, and when you die, your child takes over, and all of that. All of that changed. Now, let me give you some biblical perspectives. In the Bible, we don't have entirely democracy spelled out as a form of governance, but we have some virtues, some values in the Bible where democracy is spelled out to mean the best form of governance. One, equality. Equality, the Bible tells us the people Everybody was created in the image of God and are equal in the eyes of God. Check Galatians chapter 3 verse 28. Everyone is created by God and everyone is equal. So we should not have some kings and monarchs who dictate the pace of governance as though they are all their God. We have only one God. Again, let me quote this. There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor in the male is there male or female, for all are one in Jesus Christ. This principle of equality resonates with the democratic value of equal representation and right for all citizens. That is equality. What about justice? The Bible underscores the importance of justice and righteousness. Check Proverbs chapter 29 verse 2. It says, when the righteous thrive, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the people groan. The people perish. The people get angry. Democracy, with all its emphasis on the rule of law and the accountability, seeks to uphold justice and prevent the absolute power. It is said, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, that is to tell you democracy is in its place. Let's leave justice and talk about participation, mobilization, togetherness. Check in the Bible. The concept of participation is evident inside the Bible, where leaders often sought counsel from the people. Acts chapter 6 verse 3 talks about this. It is written, brothers, choose 7 men from among you who are known to be full of the Spirit and wisdom. We will turn this representative or this responsibility to them. This aligns with the democratic practice of electing representatives to govern. They didn't just take one person, but they took 12 people. 7 from among each tribe. Dear moderator, fellow opponents, fellow members, I tell you, democracy is the ideal. There is no gainsaying. Democracy shapes governance in a way that it gives power not to the elected, but to the people. That is why in any thriving democracy, you would see that the people can easily determine who governs well, who holds their aspiration, and then they either choose to stay with such person or they go for another, depending on their aspiration or the result they needed. Look at the Americas. Look at France. Look at other countries. In fact, I like to quote you. My best democratic premises or municipality in Cameroon is the Tico municipality. I quote you Tico because Tico has shown across the board that it can decide the fate of the running of its municipality. This mandate, you have the Social Democratic Front. This other mandate, you have the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement. It is not because this party is in governance that it stays, but it's because that person that is put in power wills the aspiration of the people, and then they decide whether he stays or not. That is democracy. We can't even blink for a second to think about the opposite of democracy. You want to think of oligarchy? You want to think of monarchy? You want to think of tyranny? No. We would stay with democracy because it is the best and the only form of governance that we choose. Mr. Moderator, in my conclusion, I tell you democracy is not merely a form of governance. It is a reflection of our highest ideals and aspirations. It embodies the principles of representation, accountability, freedom, justice, peace, participation, and economic empowerment. From its ancient roots in Athens to its widespread adoption across the world, democracy has proven on resilience, adapted itself as the best form of governance. The values of democracy are there: equity, justice, participation of all. What have you? What else do you need in a world that is embodied with injustice, in a world that is embodied with greed? If we don't have democracy as the only form of governance, I tell you, we would go back to the system of survival of the fittest, where the haves will stay and the have-not will be perished. But in democracy, everyone is involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yannick Funky, for over 10 minutes and more. You have been able to expound your preliminary ideas on the merits of democracy in a contemporary society as ours, bringing to us examples, classical examples in the physical world, Cameroon, and biblically. Now we'll turn to our speakers who are on the other side of the table, who think that democracy is not the best form of governance. Franklin Formocom, you are the first speaker. You're beginning right away.
Democracy is the best form of government. Dear viewers, I think that's what is written on our screens. And I stand here today to counteract this assertion. And as my opponent brilliantly did, I shall begin by defining what democracy is. He said democracy from its etymological root demokratia. But I'll further break it down to two words: demos and kratos. Demos meaning people and kratos meaning power. Therefore, democracy is the power of the people. And as our forebear Abraham Lincoln would define it, democracy is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Fine, that's fine. We're fine with the definition. But we get into a fundamental characteristic of democracy, which there lies my problem with that system of government. What's the fundamental characteristic of democracy, or of democratic states, or of democratic governments? It's that a democratic state or government wants to give the people what they want. That's the core, that's the crux of democracy. Allowing leadership and ruling in the hands of the masses. And I tell you, there lies a major problem. Why is there a problem when you want to give people what they want? Now, take for example, there is a mob. Somebody has stolen. Let's take that example. Somebody stole something, and there is a whole crowd following that particular person to beat him up. That's what the people want. But one person in that crowd says, no, let's not beat this person up. Let's not kill him. Keep him and let's take him, handing over to the authorities. That's a brilliant example of a democratic kind of rule, where you want to give the people what they want. And I tell you, when masses act together, they always act out of emotions. And that's the problem with a democratic state. When people gather together, like this, what the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche would say, a herd morality, cattle morality. You know, when sheep move, when one moves in front, the other follows, and that's the characteristic property of a democratic state. Everybody just wants to move in a form of a herd, a sheep, a group of sheep or cows or goats, something of that sort. Now, when a democratic state wants to give the people what they want, I'll quote to you, for example, like the United States of America. When today everybody decides that lesbianism should be allowed, government passes it to law because that's what the people want. That's what the people have decided. But is that really what they need? There we come to realize that might does not always make right. And with that, I come to the end of my debate this evening. Might does not always make right.
Right. Might does not always make right. Thank you very much, Franklin Fomokong. We are now going to be able to have the second speaker for the motion that democracy is the best form of governance. We indeed apologize for the situation with Franklin Fomokong, who could not write through to the end of his point there due to a situation with his health issue. But now we come back to get the view of from the motion that democracy is the best form of governance with Jude Akazong right on this other side of the table. Jude, you're welcome.
Thank you.
You have 10 minutes. We're beginning right away.
Thank you very much, the moderator. Good evening, dear viewers. Good evening to my fellow panelists. The form of government we choose is so relevant because it affects every aspect of our life, from the policies that guide our health right down to our freedom. In times when many are questioning leadership and political structures, I think it is of vital importance for us to consider why democracy is the best form of government. Before I dive into my arguments for this evening, I would like to talk a little bit on what my opponent Franklin Fomokong was talking about. He was making a very good example of mob justice, the majority wanting what is wrong. Of course, that is not democracy. That is an abuse of democracy, a situation which Pope Saint John Paul II would describe as the degeneration of democracy into a tyranny of the majority. The mistake my opponent was making is viewing democracy as a kind of licentious or lawless rule of government where people just decide what they want at will and is implemented. But that is not democracy. At best, it is an abuse of democracy. And of course, the abuse does not take away the use. This evening, I will be arguing for the motion that democracy is the best form of government. And to do this, I will simply look at the key characteristics and principles of democracy. There are just 6 of them, and I'll look at them very briefly. Before I go into those characteristics, I would like us to ask the question, what is the aim of governance? Why governance? Why do we need a government? Of course, Thomas Hobbes will describe in his very beautiful book, The Leviathan, that he starts by making an allusion to the past. He said there was a time in human history where people lived in a state of nature, where the strongest made the rule. The strongest person, in fact, justice was simply the advantage of the strong over the weak. And here, strength is seen in every denomination. It's not just about physical strength. It can be financial strength, it can be moral strength, and that was what made the rule. And in such state, it is characterized by total chaos. And people wanted to have order. People longed for justice. People longed for fairness and an equal system. That is why they established a government. Of course, before Thomas Hobbes, Aristotle, the great ancient philosopher who lived in the 300 ADs, BC, before the coming of Christ, had already made us to understand that the aim of government was the common good of the people. Government, the governance should bring about the happiness, justice, fairness, and the good of the people. That is the aim of justice. That is the aim of governance. And if I am to argue for the motion that democracy is the best form of governance, then I should be able to point out how democracy realizes this vision. Of course, the first principle of democracy is fair, frequent, and regular elections. Of course, in every democratic system, the citizens are given the privilege, the right, and even the obligation to choose their leaders, to choose those to be in charge of the affairs of the state. This is fairness to speak. This is respect for the right and dignity and the recognition of every individual to participate in the affairs of the state. That is a clap to democracy. That is what you will not find in other systems of government, like monarchies. Why should I be ruled by somebody simply because his father was a king, whom we cannot explain the process of coming about without considering his moral standards, maybe his vision for the state? How? Of course, but democracy gives the citizen the privilege to choose multi-political parties. That is in view of realizing the goals, the aim of governance. The second thing, the protection of the rights of the citizens. Dear viewers, it is worth noting that it is only in democratic societies that citizens have rights. In other societies, citizens have obligations, duties, and responsibilities towards the state. But democracy recognizes each and every human being because it is a government of the people. Now, the leaders in a democracy are not different from those who are being led. I think that is what makes democracy unique. The leaders are not different. In Thomas Hobbe's book, The Leviathan, of course, the Leviathan was somebody to whom the citizen had given their right to, but he was beyond those who were ruled. The Leviathan had the power to punish anybody who breaks the rule because he was the rule and he was beyond the rule. Everybody had given the right to. But in a democracy, it is true that those in power gain their power through the consent of the citizen, but they are not excluded from the citizen. They are part of the citizen. That is why John Ross will later on talk about the veil of ignorance in the establishment of laws. Now, the third principle of democracy, the rule of law, as opposed to what my opponent was saying, Franklin Fomokon, the rule of the mob. It's not the rule of the mob. It's not the rule of some few individuals which we will consider as majority or a group of people. It is not that. It is a system of government where everybody is subjected to the law. That is democracy. It is not a monarchy where the king is above the law, or where the king's relative or the king's family, they are the makers of the law. In democracy, the law is distinct from every individual and every person is subject to the law. The fourth thing, the separation of power, which goes a long way to prove the rule of law. In democratic societies, power is not centralized. It is not given to a particular person. There are different degrees. Everybody has power and an obligation attached to the power. We have the executive branch, we have the legislative, and the judicial. All of them, they have their responsibilities. And this goes a long way to prove how equal everyone is in a democracy. The legislative will make the law. This is the law. But now, they will not be the one to implement the law. The judicial will take charge of implementing the law, thereby subduing the legislative, the people who make the law. And the executive, those who execute the law, are not the ones who make the law. So you see, in one way or the other, all of us are caught in between, and you have to keep the law. If you are in charge of implementing the law, then you don't make the law. If you make the law, then it can be implemented on you. If you do not make the law, then you are a custodian of it. That is how power is decentralized in a democratic system, as opposed to every other system of government. I don't even want to talk about tyranny. A system of government where people are led according to the whims and caprices of an individual. The day he's fine, he says, okay, let people gather around in my palace or wherever and party. The day he starts, let's kill this population of people. As Niccolo Machiavelli mentioned in his book, The Prince. That's tyranny. The next principle of democracy, the citizens' participation. In a democratic system of government, the citizens are fully involved in the affairs of the country. I remember last month, in the Southwest here, the Minister of Finance had to come and defend the annual budget in front of the citizens. This is to show that there is, of course, that takes me to the last point, accountability and responsiveness, where even the executive, the people to whom we have given power to, they realize that it is the power of the people and they have to account to these people detailedly. That is what makes up democracy. And I think that with this point, democracy as a system of government achieves the aim of government, which is the common good of the people. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Jude Akazon, for expounding on the motion that democracy is the best form of government. You have held tenacious to your point. For over 8 minutes, you have said that very loud and clear. And this time around, to oppose you on the other side is Bernard Asongna, who equally has 8 minutes to write through with his point. Bernard, you say democracy is not the best form of government. In your argument, now let's listen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jude Mbaku, the moderator of our debate today. To our dear televiewers, thank you for following us. And to my brothers who have been arguing so well, I say kudos. But we'll know at the end where the flag will shift to. And the very venerable Sir Winston Churchill will say, men stumble over the truth time to time, over and over, but most pick themselves up and hurry off as if nothing had ever happened. Not to run away from the truth, which democracy is intrinsically taken away from the people. And I would like to face it like a man that I am. I will be arguing against the motion that democracy is the best form of government. In essence, what am I saying? In essence, I am standing strongly to say that this day is the fact that democracy needs to be given a second thought. In more glaring way, democracy needs to be given a critical thinking. I want to think that the explanations that have been made by my colleague who argues with me on democracy and governance has laid the foundation for me to ride on smoothly in the course of my argument. But before I go ahead, in that phrase, democracy is the best form of governance, I would like to analyze the word the best. The best. Should we go into this word the best without going back? Of course. But before we move ahead, I would like us to make a significant fall back to the etymology of the word best. What is the meaning of the word best? From the Greek word aristos. Best from the Greek word aristos, where it points to the sense of being the most excellent and the most outstanding in all circumstances. It is often used in the context of nobility and superiority. As a significance to this, the word aristos, meaning best, raises questions about meritocracy, social hierarchy, and the basis for judging who or what is the truth and who or what is considered as best. Now, the question that pops up strongly in the course of this debate, which I shall answer subsequently, is being the best a matter of innate talent, upbringing, or efforts? Is the matter of being the best, is it simply luck or popular acclamation? As you ponder on these questions, follow critically. Engage in a conversation with Peter Swinworth, Benedict XVI of blessed memory, in his book, The Light of the World. Highlights in part 3 of that book, titled, Where Do We Go From Here? And I dare to take it above. After democracy, where do we go from there? He talks so well about the connectedness of the church, the faith, and the society. Of course, democracy is a practical rule being applied in the society where the church survives and the faith blossom. Indeed, he says,
society's problem have not gotten any better, and this underscores all the more the urgency of the question concerning the shape we should give our lives. What are our values and standards? That's the question. What are we actually doing with our lives in the so-called system of government, democracy? How do we want to live them in the future? That is the question you must answer. You know, when you study critical philosophy, it's a whole period of question answering, and it's unending. As we keep on answering questions, methods are coming, clarifications are coming up, but questions will always come up. Our world today claims to live in the gracefulness and the sweet savour of democracy, of which we see very clearly in our time, but unable to talk. A world in danger of sliding into the abyss of hell, all in the name of democracy. Now, let me state the 2 points I will be expounding on in the course of these debates. The very first, that my opponent has made mention and has answered so brilliantly without even knowing. Democracy as the tyranny of the majority, as propounded by John Stuart Mill. And number 2, democracy as the paradox of informed ignorance. Let me begin now with the tyranny of the majority, what it means. He has just stated it, caressing it, but let me give you what it means and what it is. By this statement, I mean democracy can suppress minority rights and individual liberty in pursuit of collective goals. Goals that can be very dubious. Goals that can lead to the doom. This argument goes a long way to emphasize the potential for a democratic majority to infringe upon the rights and the freedom of the minority groups and individuals who are mere strugglers and mere survivors of a society infringed with the whole concept of democracy. Inasmuch as democracy claims to protect the people against the tyranny of a single ruler, John Stuart Mill, that philosopher, he holds that he can also create a new form of tyranny called the tyranny of the majority. It is struggling to prevent the tyranny of the individual, but propounding in a more serious way the tyranny now of the majority that pops up. A majority most of the time that is ignorant of education. Educare. These glaring characteristics which springs forth from democracy has been described by Joseph Ratzinger as the building of the dictatorship of relativism. What is the dictatorship of relativism? Where it does not recognize anything as definitive and whose ultimate standard consists solely of one's own ego, me, myself, and I, in front, and others are pushed to the background, all in the pretext of democracy. And so, man must gather the courage to dare to say yes. Man must seek the truth out of democracy, for he is capable of the truth, as man is an intrinsic property of truth which is knowable by man. We will note that all men have 4 characters that drive them: the character of acquisition, the character of being ambitious, the character of competition, and above all, the one that is sweeping society away, the character of jealousy. Man is never satisfied with what he has, and always want to have what others have. It's just a matter of time. We will see glaringly how politicians will shift from the common good and the growth of the community to the pursuit of power and mercy that will subsequently corrupt them. And as Plato, one of the ancient philosophers, will say, he puts it beautifully, we can never dream of having a better state till we have better men. When a state is filled with men who are better, then their thinking will not dare to go closer to democracy. By this, democracy does not hold water a single bit. I will end here for now because I will have to come back again to substantiate my brother who is not here for some reasons. Let me end here for now.
Thank you very much, Bernard Asonga, for the dexter and the eloquent presentation of your point to elucidate the fact that democracy is not the best form of government. You've used a lot of philosophical and biblical backups to be able to put your point through. Now, for those of you who are watching back home, this is Dmrtv Debate. It is live from Buea, Cameroon on Divine Mercy Radio Television this Saturday evening. And of course, I told you earlier that we will be able to give you the opportunity to have your voice in this edition. So you can send your messages. We'll take some few minutes at the end of the day, at the end of the debate, to read out your points if you are for or against. Let's now go to the motion that democracy is the best form of governance and have 4 minutes for the last speaker to give his point. You have your 4 minutes starting just right away. Yannick Fonke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, for giving me the opportunity again to give my closing arguments. And thank you very much, members of the other panel. Now, I like to indicate, when you hear the members of the opposing camp speak, you get to feel that democracy is coming to create some problems. But I tell you, democracy has come to solve all problems, even the problems they're trying to mature. Unfortunately, they are not maturing the problem the way it should be. My opponent talked about the tyranny, the rule of tyranny. Let me give him what he said, the tyranny of the majority. That is well put by him, which of course one would drive with the notion that when the majority get to decide, they suppress the voice of the minority. Well, that is not true. Who do you call the minority? The minority are simply those whose argument were not substantiable to be appreciated or to be bought off. It is said we run by the force of argument and not the argument of force. They want to take us back. Then, when people use the argument of force, the tyrants, the dictators, they use their power. When you tell you, my Lord, this cannot work because he will walk away, the people say, execute that person. Execute that person. That is the governance they feel is better off than democracy. Democracy is run by the force of argument. If we are in this debate and my argument supersedes theirs, they are the minority. I've not suppressed them. I have mainly used my voice, which is my argument, to suppress them. So the tyranny of the majority should be well expatiated. It should be well explained, not to be misconstrued like what they have done. Thank you very much. Now let us understand why democracy came. Because when you hear them speak, you feel as if there was a better form of governance and then democracy is just imposing itself. No! We have lost millions, trillions of people who died, unfortunately, because of the opposite of democracy. Do you want to think of Uganda? Idi Amin Dada? Do you want to think of what Adolf Hitler did to the Jews? Do you want to think of, just think, and then think of now? Can you have a person who just sits, who has been elected, and say, go and execute those people when the rule of law doesn't come into place? When it doesn't pass through the parliament or go through the court? It cannot happen. He can speak well here. We can speak here because of democracy. Then, Idi Amin will say, let them execute all those people on that panel. And maybe they will do a life execution here. Is that what we want? No, we want democracy. Democracy has come to solve a myriad of challenges that the others created. A myriad of challenges. We don't want that form of governance again. We want democracy where the governance is decided by the people and the people can question authority using the different legislations or the different instruments that have been put in. Like my brother said here, if the parliament passes or the legislation passes, know that you will not be able to execute that. But the court, which is of course the judiciary, will execute that together with the executive. And if the executive passes and it is not fine, it can be queried in parliament. They can do what they call, they would subpoena. They will subpoena you. Or they bring you. They will bring you to the parliament to answer question. They subpoena you or they indict you. You come and answer question. And if that is not enough, they take you to court where the court decides. That is the form of governance where it is so arranged, so polished, and so well put. So I tell you, without much ado, I know from the comfort of my heart that the members of the opposing camp will smile. And even inside this debate say, democracy is the best form of governance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's wrap it up. This time around, with the members against the motion that democracy is the best form of governance, we are glad that Franklin Fomokon is apt enough to take on this. Franklin, we apologize, by the way, for your health situation. So you have 4 minutes to wrap up what your team has been up as far as this debate is concerned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and I feel very happy to cement the arguments I shortly made and my brother elaborately made. Democracy is not the best form of government. Now, I will base my final argument on an illustration drawn from the 1943-1944 book written by George Orwell, The Animal Farm. What happened in that book? There was a farm owned by a certain man called Mr. Jones. Now the animals in the farm rioted against Mr. Jones. As I'm moving forward with the story, I ensure I bring us back to context. There is a state with persons in that state, and there is one whom they think is a dictator ruling over them. So the animals in that farm riot against Mr. Jones, led by one of them, Napoleon. Now, when they overthrew Mr. Jones and drove him out of the farm, Napoleon became the ruler. The ruler unanimously chosen by the animals. I end the illustration from the animal farm there. I tell you, dear viewers and my dear opponents, that the rule of democracy leads to one thing which my opponents have not mentioned so far. It leads to the ruling of a demagogue. And who is a demagogue? A demagogue is a ruler who takes advantage of the masses who vote him into power. So too did Napoleon do. That is why when Napoleon became the ruler in the animal farm, he made a statement: we are all equal, but among equals there are more equals. So that is the end point of democracy. All democratic states. My opponent quoted Hitler. The Nazi party was voted by a democratic state. When Hitler arose to power, he started using authoritarian and totalitarian maneuvers to keep himself in power. I quote you a second example. Just close to us here in Cameroon is a country known as the Democratic Republic of Congo. How democratic is the Republic of Congo? That country was called Democratic Republic of Congo. But the democracy in that state gave rise to a certain ruler, Mobutu Sese Seko. When Sese Seko came into power, he changed the name into Congo Zaire. And it was only after in 1997 when Sese Seko was overthrown that the country regained her name Democratic Republic of Congo. And even till today, I ask the question, how democratic is the Democratic Republic of Congo? All democracies in times past have led to the leadership or the ruling of one who is called a demagogue. I end my arguments there.
And that argument from you, Franklin Fomokon, brings us to the end of the debate you gentlemen have been able to elucidate on this platform this evening, if democracy is truly the best form of governance. Well, let us have this break. When I come back, I take one or two of the messages from those of you who have been watching so that we wrap up the discussions from this end. Right, you're listening, we're watching Dmrtv Debate live from Buea in Cameroon, and our debaters have rightly put through their point. Those of you back home, I don't know what you have in mind as far as this contemporary societal issue, governance issue of democracy is concerned. But let me quickly take on this person who says, good evening, my name is Jude. You say you are from Mutengene. I stand for the motion that democracy is the best form of government. Well, you've not given us any reason why you stand for that point. Now, let me also take this one from one of our usual debaters. He says, congratulations to our debaters. It was an enriching session. For me, I would like to flow rethinking the philosopher John Locke. According to John Locke, 1632 to 1704, the best form of governance or government is democracy. You say democracy, a government based on constitution that outlines the power and limits of government, a government that is limited in power and scope, with clear checks and balances, and prevent abuses. With this type of government, man will be able to live in communion with one another. This is Jordan Chinger, a seminarian on pastoral year, writing to us from Bojongo. This other person says, good evening, I'm enjoying the debate. Greetings to you and the panelists. Democracy has failed us big time. It is time we try something else like a monarchy. You've not given us your name. Well, because of time, it's unfortunate I cannot take many more of your point this evening. But one very thing you have to be very sure of is the fact that the debate was intended to teach you and to inform you on the merit and the drawbacks or the demerits of this form of governance, democracy. The panelists may have given their perspective. It is non-exhaustible in both camps. You might want to go on and on sometimes to understand why the world has failed in terms of democracy, or why many other countries across the globe are succeeding as far as democratic principles are concerned. One thing I must note is that there are very successful countries that use other forms of governance. It could be monarchy. Of course, Africa used monarchical systems before the white man came with colonization and introduction of democracy. But you have to also understand that in today's world, where we talk about human rights and freedoms, we think also that democracy has played a great role in bringing to fruition the respect of the human person and the dignity of the human being. You can judge from your end and make the conclusion from there, but we are happy that our gentlemen, the debaters on the panel, gave you just what you needed intellectually. At this juncture, I want to thank them so much for having participated in this wonderful discourse that was characterized by debates, counter-debates, arguments, and dialogue, of course. Yannick Fonki, thank you very much for your time this evening and for being our debater.
Thank you.
Jude Akazong as well, part of your team. You remember your team member. Thank you, Jude. It was very, very intellectual. Thanks.
Thank you too, Mr. G.
And the members on this other side who took our time to give us very convincing reasons as well why they think democracy has rather been a danger system of governance in the world. Bernard Asonge, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. G. Thank you.
And Franklin Fomokong, very astute in his presentation tonight, though trapped by cough. You've been able to place your point through. Thank you very much, Franklin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jude.
Jordan and the other people who wrote to us, thank you very much. Those of you who watch back at home, we hope to have you again next week in another edition of Dmrtv Debate. I want to thank Kindness Njoku and the entire technical crew that made possible this production this evening, live from Buea in Cameroon. This Saturday, I have been Jude Mbako Munyo here at the anchor of Dmrtv studio at the foot of Mount Fako, wishing you a splendid weekend in the company of more programs on Dmrtv. Good night.